Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to see current affairs of 1st June 2021. In this lecture, we are going to see 11 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So there is much to discuss today. So please don't waste time and let us get started. And now let us see first topic. Title says GDP shrinks by 7.3 percentage. Quarter 4 uptake moderates 2020 to 21 carnage. So this article mainly talking about this GDP. So what is meaning of GDP? GDP means total value of final goods and services which are produced within a country within a specific period of time, that is normally 1 year. Okay. So we need to add only value of final goods and services, but we are not going to add any intermediate goods. Okay. So we are mainly adding only final goods and services, whatever there is a value. So that mainly contributes to our gross domestic product. So this article will be important regarding GS paper 3 under economy. So now let us try to discuss this topic in a very great detail. So context mainly says that India's GDP, that is gross domestic product, contracted by 7.3 percentage in 2020 to 21. So this is as per national income estimates. So this may be released by National Statistical Office. So National Statistical Office released some data. It mainly says that India's gross domestic product contracted by 7.3 percentage in 2020 to 21. So if you see some details, it mainly says that marginally better than 8 percentage contraction in economy, which mainly projected earlier, but now we see contraction of 7.3 percentage. Okay, so we are doing so much better. So here GDP growth in 2019 to 2020, which is mainly prior to COVID-19, which mainly it was 4 percentage. And now gross value added in economy, which mainly shrank by 6.2 percentage in year 2020 to 21. And if you are comparing with this previous year, that was contraction of 4.1 percentage. So I want to give you one more homework here. That is, what are GDP accounting methods? So how many methods are present, and let me know here. So one of that is gross value added method, and let me know other thing. So if you see here, this article mainly says that only 2 sectors that are show negative growth of this gross value added. First one is agriculture and agriculture related allied activities. For example, agriculture, forestry and fishing. They saw contraction of about 3.6 percentage. And other sector includes electricity, gas, water supply and other utility services. They also saw contraction of 1.9 percentage. And if you see data, it mainly says that quarter 1 contracted 24.4 percentage in April-June 2020, and in quarter 2 there was contraction of about 7.4 percentage, and in quarter 3 we saw some positive growth, okay, that recorded from September to December, that is 0.5 percentage. And gross value added in sectors like trade, hotels, transport, communication, broadcasting. So we saw there is sharp decline of 18.2 percentage. And even in construction sector there is contraction of 8.6 percentage, mining and quarrying sector minus 8.5 percentage, and manufacturing 7.2 percentage of contraction. And if you see estimates, it mainly says that there is sharp recovery projected for 2021 to 2022. So according to IMF, it mainly came up with growth estimates that made earlier, it is 12.5 percentage because of easing of easing of lockdown restrictions, and there is increase in economic growth. Okay, and next one is RBI predicted that here GDP will be 10.5 percentage. And here article says what is need, how can we come up with this economic recovery. So vaccination is very important to both health and as well as economy. That means for maintaining of proper health and to decrease burden on healthcare infrastructure, we need to go for vaccination. and for economical revival also we need effective vaccination. So whenever we are getting effective vaccination, that will decrease severity of diseases. So because of this, people they can go and they can work, and finally they will contribute to our economy. So if at all there is no vaccination, that means people will have high burden of this COVID-19, and that will be also leads to increase in death tolls, right? So because of this, finally the people who are contributing to economy, that will be reduced, and also there will be increase in dependency, right? And also government expenditure that need to be increased, because government need to support for people who do not have proper social income, or we can say people who are working age, right? So there are many government schemes, like government will provide some assistance for widows also, right? Widows and as well as old age people. So whenever working age population died in family here, then that will also leads to increase in burden on government exchequer too. Okay, so this is about this topic. And now let us say next topic. Title says Supreme Court bats for one price for vaccines across nation. So to understand this article, you need to know some background. First of all, let us say this article will be important regarding mains point of view, and that too regarding GS paper 2 under governance. So if you are talking about background of this article, recently Center said that here it is coming up with this some changes in this vaccination program. So it is going for 50% of buying of vaccines from manufacturers, and other 50% that can be bought up by states, private hospitals, and also institutions etc. from directly manufacturers. So one important problem now we are facing here is, whenever center which is going for procurement of 50% of vaccines from manufacturers, they are getting at a low price. Whenever states are going for manufacturers to buy these vaccines, they are getting for at higher price. And if you see from state to state, there is also some parity that is seen, difference. Okay, so this article mainly says that we need to have one vaccine policy. Okay, so this is about some background of this article. And now let us say this topic in a very great detail. Here government claimed that it will inoculate entire eligible population by end of 2021. But here Supreme Court mainly says that there is a need of efficiency in this vaccination policy. So here Supreme Court mainly says that center is going to procure only 50% of vaccines, while 50% are left to states and as well as private hospitals, and also even some institutions of their own. So if you see some details, it mainly says that court also challenged that the differential vaccine policy is present and this need to be addressed, and we need to come up with one price for vaccines across nation. Okay, so recently Solicitor General he said that on vaccination as per estimate, so they are going to procure vaccines from domestic market, and also they are going to have some foreign vaccines like Sputnik 5, and they are expecting to entire eligible population they will get vaccinated by end of this 2021. So here in this context, court mainly highlighted that the difference in this vaccines in bulk for rupees 150 per dose for center and rupees 300 to 600 dose per state that is given from manufacturers. So because of this, we need one price policy. So this is a thing mainly focused by Supreme Court. And in this context, this article also posed some questions. So first one is, why lower price which is given to center but not to states? States are getting the same vaccine per dose which is double price. And next one is, why vaccine is purchased only 50% by center? Center can procure entire 100% and it can give to states, right? So these are two important questions are mainly posed in this article. So I hope it is clear. And now let us see next article. Title says Nagaland bamboo home in Kerala. So this article mainly talking about bamboo species of Nagaland which mainly adapted to environment in Kerala. So this article will be important regarding environment and ecology, which comes under GS paper 3. So now let us talk about this topic in a very great detail. Context says that rare bamboo from Nagaland has found a second home in Idukki in Kerala state. Okay, so now we are seeing this rare bamboo which is located in this Nagaland, now adapted well to environment of Kerala. So as a conservation program of Jawaharlal Nehru Tropical Botanical Garden and Research Institute, they came up with this planting of this rare bamboo of Nagaland in Kerala. So if you're talking about details of this species, so name of this bamboo species is Chimonobambusa callosa. So it mainly appeared to have adapted well to new environment in Kerala. Okay, Eastern Himalayan hill bamboo, which mainly seen along Indo-China region, that can grow to height of about 5 to 10 meters. And in this context, this organization also says that it is mainly taking some conservation steps that will help to boost rich collection of bamboos. And if you see what is significance, why we are going for this planting of this type of bamboo, so there are many advantages. So first one is it is ideal for soil protection, so it will be very much helpful for soil protection, and it also has some ornamental value because this bamboo which mainly grows straight and as well as it is having green clumps, and it also having a ring of thorns along the nodes. So these are some special characteristics which are present to this bamboo. Because of this, it is having highly ornamental value. So this is just of this topic. And now let us see next topic. So if you see this image, I got this image from first page of Hindu newspaper. So this article mainly talking about this small one-horned rhinoceros. So whenever you are getting this type of images in newspaper, that will be important from prelims point of view. So you need to know some facts regarding this animal, right? So this article will again important regarding environment and ecology, which comes under GS paper 3. So now let us try to discuss this topic in a very great detail. So this image which is mainly belongs to one-horned rhinoceros. So if you are talking about some facts regarding this one-horned rhinoceros, it is a one of greater one-horned rhino. It is a one of 5 different species of rhino, and 4 other species of rhino include black rhino, white rhino, Javan rhino and Sumatran rhino. In Asia, we have 3 species of this rhino. They include greater one-horned rhinoceros, Javan rhinoceros, Sumatran rhinoceros. Okay, so we are having 5 different species of rhino. They include black rhino, white rhino, Javan rhino and Sumatran rhino. And we are having 3 species of rhino which is located in Asia. They include greater one-horned rhino, Javan rhino and as well as Sumatran rhino. So if you are talking about habitat of these rhinos, so species mainly restricted to small habitats. They are mainly seen in Indo-Nepal Terai region and also northwestern Bengal and Assam region. And in India, rhinos are mainly located in states like Assam, West Bengal and Uttar Pradesh. And Assam mainly estimated about 2,640 rhinos in 4 protected areas. So in Assam, we are having 4 protected areas of this Indian rhino that will be very important for prelims. They include Pabitora Wildlife Reserve, Rajiv Gandhi Orang National Park, Kaziranga National Park and Manas National Park. So if you see one-horned rhinoceros will be seen now and then in news because of some floods in this Kaziranga National Park. So whenever monsoon gets started, because of some rivers which are overflowing, that will lead to floods in this Kaziranga National Park. Again, we can see this one-horned rhinoceros will be in news. Okay, and now let us talk about this protection status. So this protection status will be very important from prelims point of view. So under IUCN Red List, which is mainly listed under vulnerable. Under CITES, it is listed under Appendix 1. Under Wildlife Protection Act, it mainly listed under Schedule 1. Okay. And if you see threats of this one-horned rhinoceros, they include poaching, habitat loss, population density, and also decreasing genetic diversity. So these are some important threats which are mainly posing by this one-horned rhinoceros. And if you are talking about conservation efforts which are taken by India, so first one is the New Delhi Declaration on Asian Rhinos 2019. So it mainly deals with conservation and protection of the species. And next one is National Rhino Conservation Strategy, which mainly launched in year 2019 to conserve rhinos. And there is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, which mainly which this project to create DNA profiles of all rhinos in country. And recently India also came up with India Rhino Vision 2020. So these are some important things that you should remember regarding this topic. Now let us see next article. Title says Justice Mishra likely to head NHRC. There is also one more article in our today's newspaper regarding new vice chairman, I think so, regarding this CBDT. So please refer that also. Okay, so CBDT, Center Board for Direct Taxes. So for this also there is new chairman, I think so, or new member. So please refer this. I didn't add this article to today's newspaper. So because of this I am intimating you. So now let's come back and let us see this topic. Title says Justice Mishra likely to head NHRC. So this article mainly talking about National Human Rights Commission. So this article will be very much important regarding GS paper 2 under polity. You can expect prelims based questions from this topic. So now let us try to discuss this topic in a very great detail. So this article mainly talking about National Human Rights Commission. So if you see context, it mainly says that former Supreme Court Justice, that is Arun Kumar Mishra, he likely to be new chairperson of NHRC after high power committee recommendations. So high power committee recommendations, based on that here former Supreme Court Judge, that is Justice Arun Kumar Mishra, he is likely to become new chairperson of this National Human Rights Commission. So this is context, and if you see some details, so we are going to see some facts regarding this NHRC. NHRC is a multi-membered body which mainly contains chairman and 7 other members. So out of these 7 members, there are 3 ex officio members, and chairman will be appointed by presidents on recommendations of high power committee, which is mainly headed by Prime Minister. And if you see here, chairperson mainly appointed for tenure of 5 years or till the age of 70 years. And if you see removal, he can be removed only on charges of proved misbehavior and as well as incapacity. So these are some important things. And now let us talk about some basic facts. What is this NHRC? NHRC, it is an independent statutory body, right? So it mainly established under one important act, that is Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993, and which mainly established on 12th October 1993. So whenever you are talking about any body, we will come across statutory body and as well as constitutional body. Constitutional body means if at all that body will be implemented or established under any one article, okay, and here statutory means under one act. So here it is, why it is a statutory body, because it mainly established under Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993. So because of this it will be a statutory body. And next one is important function of this National Human Rights Commission is it acts as a watchdog of human rights in country. So human rights mainly include right to life, liberty, equality, dignity of individual. So these are some important things that you should remember regarding this topic. Now let us see next article. Title says as births decline, China allow couples to have a third child policy. So in China, government imposed 2-child policy in China. That means one couple should not have more than 2 children. So why this policy came up by China? So because of increase in population in China, China has implemented this child policy. So now it is 5 years government imposed this 2-child policy in China. And now government mainly allowed to go for a third child. So why government imposed again, gave permission to third child? Because if at all there is decrease in childs now. So as we know, today's children are tomorrow's citizens. So number of child this year or this generation which is very less, that means in future the age group will be decreased. So finally that will lead to some developmental deficits to economy of China. So because of this permission gave by China. So this article will be important regarding GS paper 2 under international relations. So now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. Context says that China will for the first time allow couples to have a third child. So further relaxation of family planning rules 5 years after 2-child policy. So after 2-child policy that implemented by government of China, and after 5 years, now government of China came up with some relaxation of family planning to go for a third child here. So this because this 2-child policy largely failed to boost birth rates in China. And if you see some details, it mainly says that a major policy measures to actively address aging population during 14th 5-year plan. So in this 14th 5-year plan of China, which mainly came to address aging population in China. Okay, this 14th 5-year plan period, that is from 2021 to 2025. So recently data released by National Bureau of Statistics, it mainly says that in last year just 12 million babies they were born, and it is the lowest number since 1961 in China. So if you are talking about data of census, so China's population is about 1.41 billion in 2020, an increase of just 72 million since last census. Okay, that happened in 2010, that is 2010. So there was from 2010 till now in China only 72 million people they have been increased. So it mainly says that in 10 years there is just 5.38% of increase in population. If you see for annually, it is just 0.538%. And if you are talking about data of people who aged 60 years or more than 60 age, there are about 264 million people, and they are also increased to 5.4% since 2010. And here people who are more than 60 years of age or 60 years, they contribute about 18% of total population of China. And next one is working group population, that is from 15 years to 59 years. There are about 894 million persons, and it decreased by 6.79% since 2010, that is 2010. And it mainly accounting for total 6.35% of total population of China, which is having this working group population who are between 15 to 59 years. And Chinese workforce that mainly includes people from 15 to 59 years, which mainly peaked at 925 millions in year 2011. So it is according to Ministry of Human Resource and Social Security, and this number has become down to 894 million in this census, and this number which mainly go to further decreased to 700 millions by 2050. So this is about data. So because of this, it is one of biggest challenge that need to be posed by China, because there is decreasing working age group people. So whenever there is decreasing work age people, then what happen? It will have adverse impacts on economy and as well as development of that country in near future. So if you are talking about this two-child policy which implemented by Chinese government in 2016, okay, so it has a wide consensus regarding this two-child policy. And in 2015 survey by government, it mainly said that 70% of respondents they attributed financial reasons for choosing to not to have many children. And beyond that, Chinese government imposed this two-child policy. Further, that led to decrease in babies in China. So this is just of this topic, and now let us move on to next topic. Title says fiscal deficit narrower than forecast at 9.2%. So this article mainly talking about physical deficit. That means we can say whenever there is imbalance, that means expenditure which is more than revenue. So whatever the shortfall is there, that will comes under this fiscal deficit. So this article will be important regarding economy, which comes under GS paper 3, and this mainly comes under your static syllabus. So if you see context, it mainly says that India recorded a fiscal deficit of 9.2% of GDP in financial year 2020 to 21. Okay, so India recorded fiscal deficit of 9.2%. So if you see, according to recent estimate, it was found that 9.5% will be our fiscal deficit, and now we found it is 9.2%. So this is according to data which is released by Controller General of Accounts. So you need to know some facts regarding this Controller General of Accounts. So now let us see some details and some data which is given in this article. So total revenue receipts, which is about 88,000 crore, which is higher than estimated, and higher collections mainly seen from customs collections and as well as seen from this custom collection. This is according to CARE ratings report. And if you are talking about total expenditure, it is 61,000 crore, which is more than revised estimate. So here CJA mainly predicts that there is revenue deficit of 7.42% of our GDP. Okay, And if you're talking about our budget, so we came up with this fiscal deficit target. We need to maintain 3.5% of GDP, but now it is 9.2% of our GDP. It is very, very high. So now let us talk about some facts regarding this. What is this fiscal deficit? So fiscal deficit means we can say the excess of total disbursement from Consolidated Fund of India, which mainly excludes repayment of debt, overall total receipts into the fund. So in short, we can say what is this fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit means we can understand the shortfall of government revenue when compared to its spending. Okay. That means we can say expenditure will be more compared to that of our revenue. So this condition is called as fiscal deficit. You can simply remember this. And if you see some formula here, so this formula will be important. So total expenditure of government, that means expenditure will comes from both capital and as well as revenue expenditure. And we are separating income of government. Income of government will mainly comes from receipts, revenue receipts and recovery of loans and as well as other receipts. So there is imbalance in expenditure and revenue. So expenditure is commonly more when we are compared to revenue, and this is called as fiscal deficit. So if you talk about expenditure side, so there will be revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Revenue expenditure mainly includes payment of salaries, pensions, etc. And capital expenditure mainly includes for creation of any assets or development of any roads or any dams here. So government will allocate some funds that will comes under capital expenditure of government. And next one is income. So income can be generated from two sources. First one will be from taxes and second one will be non-taxes. So from taxes, like we can talk about corporate tax, income tax, custom duties, excise duties and GSTs. And if you're talking about non-tax revenues, they include external grants, interest receipts, dividend and profits and receipts from union territories. So from here we are getting income. And now let us talk about some facts regarding this Controller General of Accounts. So here this Controller General of Accounts, CGA, mainly comes under Department of Expenditure. So this Department of Expenditure under control of Ministry of Finance. And if you see here, this CGA mainly it is one of principal accounting advisor of Government of India. And this mainly responsible for establishing and as well as maintaining a technically sound management accounting system in India. And it mainly prepares monthly and annual analysis of expenditure, revenues, borrowings and also various fiscal indicators of central government. Okay, so this is just of this topic. I hope it is clear. And now let us say next topic. Title says Defense Ministry notifies 108 negative imports. Here government came up with a positive indigenization list. Okay, so this article mainly says that we need to go for ban of import of 108 products. Okay, so whenever we are banning imports, that means indirectly we are going to boost our indigenization. That means we are going to take those products from our Indian industries or Indian manufacturing companies. Okay, so this is some background. So this article will be important regarding GS paper 3 under defense. And this topic will also important regarding economy point of view because we are talking about imports and exports, right? So now let us try to talk about this topic in a very great detail. First, let us see context. So if you see context, it mainly says that Defense Ministry notified second negative list of imports. So recently last year we came up with this first list, okay, and first list mainly contains 101 items. And now second list mainly contains 101 items in first list and 108 items in second list. Overall there are about 209 items. So this second list of imports is also called as positive indigenization list. And this positive indigenization list mainly contains 108 items and they can now only purchase from indigenous industries of India. So what will be significance? Here whenever we are going for banning of imports, that means we are going to boost our indigenization and we are going to take these products from Indian manufacturers from now onwards. So because if you see here, government target is to develop or to go for indigenization in India, and here this should be about $25 billion by 2025. And government targeted its exports of $5 billion by 2025. Okay, so this is our Indian government target. And next one is, if you're talking about details, so this second list mainly contains complex systems, sensors, stimulators, weapons, ammunitions like helicopters, next generation converts, and airborne early warning and control systems, tank engines, medium powered radar for mountains, and that is a medium range surface to air missile system, weapon system. So all these mainly included in this second list, and now we are going to purchase them from Indian manufacturers itself. And now let us talk about next topic. Title says Co-Win, casinos and luck. So in this regard, we are going to see some facts regarding this Co-Win that will be important from UPSC point of view. We are not going to discuss what does this article talk about, but we are focusing on this Co-Win. So that will be important regarding GS paper 2 under governance. And this topic will be important especially from prelims point of view. So context mainly says that, so this Co-Win mainly belongs to a cloud-based information technology platform. It mainly supposed to handle minute details of India's COVID-19 immunization program. For example, it includes registry of beneficiaries and as well as allocating vaccination centers and sending text messages with the name of their vaccinator to beneficiaries, and as well as it also includes live monitoring of vials in cold storage, etc. And if you see some agencies mainly involved here, so this platform mainly owned by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Earlier this platform mainly used for conducting pulse polio and other crucial immunization programs across the countries. Okay, so this is not a new platform now we came up with, but earlier also we have this platform, and earlier we used this platform to conduct pulse polio. Okay, and this same platform has been expanded mainly for rolling out of COVID-19 vaccines, and Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology along with the National Information Center, they are mainly handling this backend and also the technical infrastructure for this Co-Win platform. If you are talking about features here, they include monitoring and tracking, and as well as Aadhaar enabled system, they are mainly present in this Co-Win platform. So these are the things that you should remember regarding this topic. And now let us see next article. Title says recognizing caste-based violence against women. So this article mainly talking about one important act, that is Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act here. So this will be very important regarding polity point of view, which comes under GS paper 2. And this topic will be exclusively important from mains point of view. So I will try my level best to make you understand this topic. So to understand this topic, we need to see some background. So recently we saw Hartar's case, right? So because of this Hartar's case, and as well as we saw number of incidents which are happened against these Dalits. Okay, for example, Unnao case, right? So here many activists, academicians and lawyers, they argued that sexual violence took place on account of women's gender and caste. Okay, so because of this we need to invoke Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989. Okay, this need to be invoked here. But if you see recent judgment of Supreme Court in Patan Jamal Wali versus State of AP, Andhra Pradesh, which mainly addressed about intersectionality of caste, gender and disability. So it came up with a new dimension, that is intersectionality. Okay, we are also taking into account that is intersectionality. Okay, so in this context, in this case, one woman who is mainly blind, okay, who is mainly blind of 22 years, belongs to Dalit. She was accused, or she mainly as a victim, so she is victim of some sexual harassment. So here case went to trial court and high court, and high court convicted the accused for rape under section 376 of Indian Penal Code and under section 3 subclass 2(5), okay, of Prevention of Atrocities Act, and sentenced him to lifetime imprisonment. Okay, so whenever any person who is accused under this Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act, punishment will be longer than compared to other sections of IPC. Okay, so this person mainly sentenced under this Prevention of Atrocities Act, and he sentenced, okay, and as well as he gave lifetime imprisonment. So again case went to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court in this case it confirmed conviction, punishment for rape under IPC, but it set aside the convention under this Prevention of Atrocities Act. So here, if you see here, Supreme Court judgment have some important significance. First one is court used an opportunity mainly to bring recognition to intersectional discrimination. So it mainly focused on intersectional discrimination, which is mainly faced by women on grounds of sex, caste, and as well as disability. But on the same side, which is mainly setting aside convention under this Prevention of Atrocities Act. So now let us try to talk about what are the positives, that is regarding intersectoral approach. So this intersectoral approach word mainly coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. Mainly he coined this term because regarding this discrimination which is faced by black women in US. And if you are seeing about some positives here in this case, Supreme Court elaborated need on intersectoral approach and said that we need to take into account multiple marginalities which are mainly faced by women victim. We need to identify women intersex like regarding her caste, class, religion, disability, and as well as sexual orientation. Okay, on this violence because of whenever we are seeing these are present, that means two or more grounds are present, we need to also take into account this intersectoral approach. If you are talking about Prevention of Atrocities Act, which mainly enacted to address atrocities against persons who are belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes community, and later on it amended in 2015. So why we came up with amendment? Because to specially recognize more atrocities against this Dalit and as well as Adivasi women, that also including now sexual assault, sexual harassment, and as well as Devadasi dedication. But if you see here, section 3 subclass 2(5) of this Prevention of Atrocities Act, which mainly says that person who is not being SC or ST member, but whenever he commits any offense under this IPC, that is sections of this Indian Penal Code, then that person will be punished for this offense, and he will be punished for imprisonment for life with fine here. But if at all we are committing that same offense under IPC, it will be punishment for 10 years, okay, or more. But if the same person who is not belonging to SC or ST member, then if he is committed under this Prevention of Atrocities Act, then punishment will be imprisonment for life, okay, and also even with fine. So whenever any person who is accused or who is mainly convicted under this Prevention of Atrocity Act, then punishment will be longer than compared to that of offense which is booked under this Indian Penal Code. So in 2015 amendment made to this section also. So we made change like on the ground that such member of SC ST to knowing that such a person is a member of SC and ST. That means by knowing that so and so girl or woman belongs to SC or ST and they are going for this sexual assault, then only it will come under this Prevention of Atrocities Act now under this 2015 amendment. Okay, so because of this, mainly many cases which are dealt by Supreme Court, they are kept aside. For example, Ramdas and other versus State of Maharashtra in 2006, Danish alias Buddha versus State of Rajasthan 2006, and Ashrafi versus State of UP 2017, Kumar Singh versus State of MP in 2019. Okay, so because of all these, there are many cases that are set aside from this Prevention of Atrocities Act. So why? Here Supreme Court mainly says that there is no evidence to show that accused committed sexual assault on ground that victim was member of this SC or ST community. So we don't know about that girl or that woman belongs to this SC and ST community, and there is no evidence to prove that. So because of this, many cases they are kept aside from this Prevention of Atrocities Act. So this is just of this topic. I hope it is clear. Now let us say next topic. Before saying that, I want to make a small announcement. So if you want to clear UPSC 2022, we came up with one excellent, highly beneficial and also highly economical course, that is Current Affairs package along with mains answer writing practice. So how this course will be useful to clear this UPSC 2022? So one thing you need to remember here is, before entering into examination hall, you need to know at least 1.5 years current affairs for sure. And this is right time to join this course to cover this 1.5 years current affairs in a comprehensive manner. And why you need to focus on this current affairs? So most of your preparation that should be on current affairs, because 50% of your questions either in prelims, mains and even interview, that will be based on this current affairs. So mastering of current affairs is very important to clear this UPSC. And next one is, if you are talking about this answer writing practice, many students who are especially beginners or freshers, they ignore this answer writing practice. They will be thinking like, after completing NCERT, we will start that. After completing static books, we will be starting our answer writing practice. But that will be not a correct approach to UPSC. So you need to start your answer writing preparation whenever you started your preparation. In this course, we are focusing on how to improve our answer writing skills. And next one is, we also conduct prelims test on every Sunday at 10 o'clock. And we also provide a video explanation part. So in this way, this course which is mainly designed as per demand of UPSC. So finally, I want to say one thing. Please don't take this course as a choice. Try to join this course as soon as possible and achieve your dream of clearing UPSC. For further details, link which is given in description box. So please visit that once. And if you want to talk to me directly regarding this course, you can call to this number 8074765513. Okay, and now let's come back and let us say next article. Title says power play to bring the digital ecosystem to heal. So this article mainly talking about new IT rules and one important section which is mainly discussed in this topic. And now let us try to discuss this article from our UPSC point of view. And this article will be important regarding GS paper 2 under polity again. Okay, so now let us try to understand this article. This article mainly talking about IT, that is information technology, intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code rules 2021. So here it mainly talks about rule 4 subclass 2 of information technology rules 2021. So this rule mainly impose obligations on significant social media intermediaries. So it mainly focusing on significant social media intermediaries, which mainly providing messaging function. That means whenever any social media platform which providing any messaging function, that need to ensure traceability of originator of information on their platforms. Okay, why? Because there are many disinformation regarding vaccines and as well as cow vigilantism that is spreading rapidly in this social media. So because of this, that is creating quite violence, and because of spreading of misinformation, that is also leading to vaccine hesitancy, right? So mainly to address to this situation, so we need to control this information spread or disinformation spread in this social media platforms, right? So because of this, if these social media platforms are failed to apply this, then it is responsibility of the social media platforms for illicit content that is mainly spreading in their social media platforms. So these rules recently come into effect. So recently WhatsApp mainly filed petition in Delhi High Court. It mainly alleging that, it mainly saying that, so whenever there is a mandate for traceability of originator of information, then that will mainly violate the privacy rights of Indian citizens. And even WhatsApp, which is mainly providing end-to-end encryption, so mainly to see originator, or whenever we want to trace this originator of this information, we need to go for know about this originator of this information. That means we need to remove this end-to-end encryption. Okay, so because of this, it mainly violates right to privacy. As we know, this right to privacy is a fundamental right in India under this K.S. Puttaswamy judgment. So here government mainly replies that privacy, it is not an absolute right here. So whatever fundamental rights which are present in India, they are not absolute. Okay, so even K.S. Puttaswamy judgment decision, which mainly said that there is some restriction that can be kept on this right, it is not absolute. Okay, so restriction on this right which is must necessary, and as well as it is proportionate, and it includes safeguards against abuse. So this is about this article, and I hope it is clear. So by this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. And don't forget to enroll this current affairs package. Thank you so much.